Hey everyone, Jan here, codingwithjan.com. Hydrogen and Oxygen, built for Shopify, the new checkout extensibility, and Shopify Functions are 4 massive new features coming to Shopify. Today we're going to be covering what they are, how they will impact us as developers, and the opportunities ahead of us. So I'm super excited for this one. Let's have a look. Alright, so first of all we have Hydrogen and Oxygen, and they have been announced a while ago, but there has been a lot of progress behind the scenes. So now we're pretty much looking at a full-blown React-based framework for building custom storefronts on Shopify. Let me explain. So as you guys know, the way Shopify usually works is that on one hand, we have the admin dashboard, which is pretty much the store's backend. And then you would choose a good theme, which pretty much determines how the website feels and looks to visitors. So that's the store's front end. Yeah, so on the backend side, we have all these core e-commerce features, like content management capabilities, managing products, collections, customer accounts, orders, payments, and so on and so forth. And themes let you showcase your products, so they're kind of like the interface between website visitors and all these e-commerce features. Now, most of the times, this default setup of backend and then a theme is already enough to build a great e-commerce website, especially if someone is just getting started with selling online. It's very simple, it's straightforward to set up, it's battle tested. So yeah, this pretty much works in most use cases. However, at the same time, themes also come with their own set of limitations, and some merchants may want to create a very custom or unique buyer experience. So this could be a completely separate website, it could be a mobile app, maybe you even want to sell groceries through a smart fridge or things like that. Or maybe you've built a game in Unity, and then when someone beats the final boss, you unlock some special merchandise. So very custom and unique things like that. So in these cases, you would no longer need a theme, but instead you can use the Shopify API to connect your custom app, your game, your custom storefront with all these e-commerce features, like product data, payments, and so on and so forth. So in a way, Shopify kind of becomes this e-commerce engine that supercharges your storefront with all these e-commerce features. Yeah, that's the whole idea of a Shopify-powered custom storefront. Alright, and now back to Hydrogen, which I mentioned is a React-based framework for building these custom storefronts. So you can use Hydrogen to build custom React-based websites and then power them through Shopify. So this could be interesting for several reasons. First of all, performance is a big one. You will experience a huge boost in performance. You will find pre-built UI components and libraries to speed up the development process. If you're looking to hire a developer, then React-based projects or React-based websites might also attract different people with different talents. So that could be an interesting angle. And to make this whole developer experience even more seamless, we will also find a native hosting solution integrated into Shopify. So namely, that's Oxygen. So that's why it's called Hydrogen and Oxygen. Hydrogen being the React framework for building your website, and Oxygen, the hosting solution directly integrated into Shopify. So, if you're a passionate React developer, links in the description. Alright, moving on with the second on our list, the new checkout extensibility features. And if you're familiar with Shopify, then you probably know that checkout customizations can only be done on Shopify Plus stores, with the only exception of post-purchase checkout extensions, which allow you to add a post-purchase page directly into the checkout flow. But the way customizations work on Plus stores is that you would contact the support and then they would enable the checkout.liquid file. So there you could add regular HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and liquid code. However, this approach came with a couple risks. So first of all, there was this huge risk of breaking something, which actually happened to me once. So there was a Shopify Plus client doing about 200K a month. We had a broken checkout for 2.5 days and approximately burned 15,000 in revenue. That was completely my fault. I also have a video about that story. But the second issue that we had was that the checkout is constantly evolving and changing. So your code would need a lot of maintenance in terms of catching up with changing elements or changing naming selectors, these types of things. Now, to address these issues, Shopify introduces the new checkout extensibility, which basically allows you to augment the checkout by building custom or public apps. So for example, you could build an app that offers visitors certain upsell products depending on the items in their cart, which is awesome. And while building these apps, you will also have a wide array of UI components that you can use just to make everything look consistent. And you can also decide where your features should show up by using so-called extension points. So that's like predefined positions where features can appear. And then similar to themes where we have sections, merchants can also use the customizer to move your checkout extensions around and maybe replace content, images, texts, and so forth if you coded them in a dynamic way. So how cool is that? The next topic we're going to be covering is called Build for Shopify. And that's actually a set of different features, mainly concerning app developers. So first, we have a set of technical features or development features. For example, apps will also support a full screen mode, or with AppBridge 2.0, you will have much faster loading times. If you have an embedded app, you will be able to stick that to the sidebar of the admin dashboard for ease of access. And also inside your apps, you will now be able to create a sidebar menu as opposed to the top bar menu that we're all familiar with. Beyond these very technical features, there are also going to be new design guidelines. So some of you might be familiar with Polaris, which is a UI library with different pre-built app components that make your app look native to the Shopify interface. But these new guidelines will also explain how you can create your own components and make them match. And they will also include tons of best practices in terms of how to structure your app and tips on how to improve the overall user experience. And I think here it's also very important that we distinguish between the App Store requirements, which are mandatory if you want to get your app listed, and then these new design guidelines, where most of them are optional. But since they drastically help to improve the overall user experience, there are going to be some rewards in the form of how your app ranks and how it's being listed, also how it's being promoted. So Shopify is also going to be a lot more transparent about how listings and rankings work and how these promotions work. Basically how the App Store algorithm works in a sense. And that's going to be very interesting. Links in the description. All right, lastly, we want to go over Shopify Functions. And for the first time ever, developers will be able to extend the native Shopify features by writing custom backend code. This was also beautifully illustrated on the Shopify Devs channel. So if we think about it in 3 different layers, we first have the front end, which is extensible through Liquid and Hydrogen. Then we have the database that we can access through the API. And with Shopify Functions, developers will also be able to replace or augment key parts of the backend logic by writing custom code. And at least to my knowledge, that's the first time ever a cloud-based e-commerce system offers that. Another remarkable feature of Shopify Functions is that you can actually write code in any language that can be compiled to WebAssembly. So this includes languages such as Go, Rust, AssemblyScript, and some others as well. The only thing you might want to pay attention to when picking another language are the limitations in terms of file size, because Shopify deeply cares about performance. Okay, now you might be wondering, how are Shopify Functions even different from traditional apps? Excellent question. And a few things you gotta understand here. First of all, with Shopify Functions, your code literally runs on Shopify's infrastructure, whereas with traditional apps, you need your own hosting, your own server, and so on and so forth. Then second of all, even though the computation happens on Shopify's infrastructure, the way you install Shopify Functions is still through apps, which is awesome because it also means you can share them across the App Store with potentially millions of merchants out there. And it also means you can add them to your existing apps if you want. But once they're installed, the computation happens on Shopify's infrastructure, which also makes it very performant. The third main difference is that with traditional apps, the only way to bring up the settings was by clicking into the app. So for example, if we're talking about a discount app, the merchant would go into the Apps tab, then bring up your app and configure everything there. And now with Shopify Functions, you can actually seamlessly integrate your settings into the admin dashboard. So if we use the same example of a discount app, they would just go into the discounts and then find your settings right there. And the merchant might not even realize that the settings they are looking at are coming through an app, which is awesome. The only caveat here is that even though the computation happens on Shopify's side, the interface or the settings for your Shopify Functions still have to be served through your app. And that's very important to keep in mind, but they would also become more clear in the developer docs. The last cool thing you should know about Functions is that they will be available on all Shopify plans, not just Shopify Plus. It means there's a huge potential audience for the functions that you write. And if that sounds interesting, as we're speaking, the developer preview for the checkout discount logic is already live. And then other key areas such as shipping, payments, return validations, and many more will also follow over time. So this is not just a discount thing, and there are going to be tons of opportunities in the foreseeable future. So now's a good time to get in. All right, everyone, that's it for this video. Super exciting times. And if you're interested in any of these new features, I've added links to the best resources I could find in the video description. And there's also going to be a link to an overview page that summarizes the over 100 new features that were just announced at Shopify Editions. So you definitely don't want to miss out on that. And then have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.